Hello, everybody. So, welcome for another career and spirituality conversations. And if it's your first time listening in, I'm your host, Julie Pone, and I support spiritual seekers having a career experience to reconcile what they do for a living with who they are as a soul. And to help me out in this mission today, I'm super happy to receive Stephen Dargan for the second time. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Great to see you, Julie. Great to be here. Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
believe
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Well, it's my second time here as well, which is brilliant. Shows you how much fun we had on the first one.
Yeah, that was an amazing conversation. I'll make sure that everyone has the link to go and listen to it as well,
Mhm.
because it was so packed with super cool information and references. But then we can expand on that. So that's gonna be cool. In the meantime, before we start, we'll have a little grounding like I usually do. So for everyone who can close their eyes, let's do that. And very easy, we're just going to take a minute of deep breath, just focusing on the area of our heart, connecting with our heart. Maybe we can hear or feel the sensations of our hearts beating in our chest. And then very simply breathing a little bit slower and deeper than we usually do for about a minute. Another two or three cycles of breath. Okay, and then slowly let's bring ourselves back and opening our eyes when we're ready. And ta-da, welcome back. Thank you so much, Stephen, for being here. So for those of you who don't know you, Stephen from Happy Workplaces. So working like for decades now with organizations making people happier at work, right?
Yeah, I suppose
Mm.
it. I don't know if I mentioned the last podcast, but I was just inherently interested in like why we turn up to work when I used to work in leadership inside of work, and I used to
Mhm.
wonder, you know, is the way we work a little bit broken? And if we make it even better for people at work, what changes? And when people feel good about themselves at work, we've discovered that people get a chance to be able to play to their strengths and do what they're best at each day and have the right tools and guidelines to get even better at that. What we've recognized is there's an internal motivation that people have, an intrinsic experience that they have when it comes to getting better at what they do. And they're more willing to stretch themselves and get a little bit um, beyond the point of where the comfort zone is. So it's
Mhm.
not that they're stretching themselves beyond their comfort zone at every minute of every day, but there's moments where they're challenging themselves. And inertly, we as human beings do this all the time because at the weekends we do things that we don't get paid for, but we do them. Like we take guitar lessons, or we coach football teams, or we become scout leaders, or guide leaders, or whatever it might be. And we do all these things because there's something inert inside us that gets triggered when we help others or do something that makes us feel good. So the same as in work. If we can find ways to tap into our intrinsic motivators, we'll go that extra mile. Um, so yeah, I've always been inherently interested in why we turn up to work, what can make that experience of work feel that little bit more of an experience where um, not only we feel good about ourselves, but the end results then allow us to be able to um, be more creative. So we come up with better ideas, take more risks, when it comes to um, ideas that mightn't have been formed before, but now we feel safe enough to be able to do that. And we also know that these organizations then become more profitable. People are more likely to stay. This turnover is lessened with inside of the organization, and everybody seems to win because I know that if I work for an organization where I get to do what I'm best at each day, and I feel good about what I do, and I'm given the supports and the tools to be able to do that, and I'm given levels of autonomy, well, my stress levels begin to drop. And if my stress levels are shortened by are lessened by the experience of me being at work, this impacts then the relationships I have when I go home with partners, with kids,
Yeah.
with the wider community, with wider society in general. Everybody wins. So this should be the aim of every organization. How can we allow that to happen? Because society will only benefit if we're in that sphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we spend a substantial amount of time
Hmm.
of our day in work. So it's
It's
either, yeah, it's either a lot of stress and negativity that rolls over into our family, or it's a lot of positivity that rolls over everywhere, right?
Yeah, you spend more time in work than you do in bed, and we know how important sleep is for
Yeah.
our function. So if part of your day or the 8 hours that you do spend at work or even longer is
Mm-mm-mm.
a really negative and stressful experience, well, that's going to impact every other area of your life. You're not going to sleep very well. Your relationships are going to be impacted negatively too. Your health is going to be impacted too as well. Your ability to be able to do things that give you joy in life are probably going to be impacted too because you don't have the energy after you leave work to do them, or you're in work for too long to be able to experience those things. And we really need to take stock of what do we really want out from work. And the best leaders are now working at ways to be able to create organizations where their people feel good about themselves. They're given the right tools and the guidelines, the support and the help to be able to create that environment. So those cultures are the best. Yeah, they're the ones of the future. They're the ones we need to be championing.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it makes so much sense. I don't imagine there's a single person employed in a company today that wouldn't think this is a good idea, right?
Hmm.
So how come it's taking so long for us to get there? But I believe out of the people I know around me, like you're the one who's gonna be able to inspire us the most in, like, yes, confirming there are places like that. There are companies, there are already a movement that leads the way and is getting bigger and it is possible. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so
there
yeah,
is because we keep looking to the past and hoping that the past is going to give us solutions, and the past just drags us back to the past, and the thinking of what we've done before, and like we as human beings find it very difficult to change, okay, because we like being
yeah,
comfortable, and coming out of that space where it's comfortable is difficult, and for centuries, for thousands of years, that's exactly the way the human being is. Like your brain is hardwired to reset itself back to comfort and not to head for discomfort. Your brain is
yeah,
doing this all the time. So we don't have much reference points of workplaces being, great places to work. Like the Industrial Revolution and the novels of Charles Dickens goes to show us how difficult work was only, 150 years ago. And yet here we are still, reeling from that idea that work should have lots of sort of negative connotations, and we should use, warlike statements like that. It's a battlefield out there at
oh yeah,
work, and yeah, all of those different types of things that we talk about when it comes to work. But it doesn't have to be that way. So the more we keep referencing how, you know, great leadership was years ago, or even, how better work was years ago, or using reference points from outdated thinking, we can never move forward. It's almost like, and I spoke about Ricardo Semler before, who was from the
yeah,
company Semco, based in Brazil, who actually he's transformed the way people think about the world of work. Because one of the things that he did, but when he got to the age of 50, he decided, like, he'd become quite famous from the books that he had written and the talks that he had done, and everybody was trying to emulate many of the actions or the characteristics of his leadership around the world. And he decided, like, if I keep getting lost in the fame of my past, then I
mhm,
can't move forward with new ideas into the future. So he built a big pit. Well, he dug a big pit in his back garden, and he put all the references, the books and all the articles and all that kind of stuff into the pit, and he lit them on fire. So he burnt his past. Yeah, well, first of all, he didn't want his children to know how famous he was, and didn't want
yeah,
to be sort of change down to what their dad was, because it's really difficult being the child of a famous person, because
Mhm.
your reference points are rarely you, but always your parent. So yeah, he didn't want to have them change to that. So yeah, he got rid of that. And only when we do that, sometimes we can think differently about the world of work. So now we're at a space where we really need to think completely different about the
Mhm.
world of work. Well, we can talk about the 4-day week, we can talk about AI, we can talk about, now the world of remote working is a normalized experience for many, or hybrid working is for many. And all of these things wouldn't have been spoken about 20
Yeah.
years ago.
Mhm.
You just need to go back to January 2020 and just even think about going to your boss and asking them about the idea of remote working.
Yeah.
They probably would have looked at you with two heads and said, "How do you think that's going to work?" And you would have come up with, we can do emails if you want, me to
Mhm.
contact you with a document. You can talk to me on the phone if you want to hear my voice. You can look at there's some software out there, whether it's Skype or Microsoft Teams or Zoom or something like that, and you can actually see my face if you want to do that. But really, yeah, I think I can do this. But your boss probably said, no, I don't think you can, and this won't be happening. But in the space of a month and a half, hey ho, there we
Yeah.
are, all
Yeah.
learning how
Yeah.
to work from home. And now that genie is out of the bottle, we don't go back to that. So now
Mhm.
and what we've discovered is that for a lot of us, we're more productive at home because there's less disturbances, there's less, you know, there's less. I suppose if you've ever worked in an open plan office, there's less distractions. There's less, there's more control over your working hour day. You decide what way it goes, and we've subtly discovered that we're being more productive in less time, and that's
Yeah.
feeding into the narrative that maybe the 4-day week is
Yeah.
a possibility
So
for many.
that's great because that last time you were saying that we are there's loads of pilots and it's
Hmm.
getting bigger, and you were hinting that this is the way the future is gonna go. So
Hmm.
after, like, it's been 2.5 years that we talked, like, what do you see? How did you see it evolve? And are we getting to I do say a tipping point anytime soon for that, do you think?
Well, I think a couple of points are going to play into that. One is that the whole generation that's coming to the world of work,
Yeah.
Generation Alpha, the 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds at this moment, they're thinking differently about what they want out of work, and they're looking at the parents, grandparents, and they're thinking, I don't want to work like that, or work as long as that, or give so much time to turning up to a cubicle or an office space or whatever. I want more freedom in my life, more autonomy or control over what way my day or week goes. And they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. There's all of this information out there that has shown them that this can work, and they've readily seen this. This
Mhm.
is done. This works. So it's the idea that who are the companies that are leading the way when it comes to the 4-day week, and how can I find a way to be able to work for that organization? So the talent are moving to those organizations that are going to value them as human beings.
Mhm.
And secondly, we need to move away from the idea that it's just by clocking in hours
Yeah.
at work. So we think the 40-hour week, like it was Henry Ford, I think, would have introduced
Mhm.
that. And that's well over 100 years now ago at this stage. And we're still tied to the idea that that's what people should work. But the truth is, people should work based on results. And if I attain my results in the space of a shorter time, well, then that should be absolutely fine with you. Going back to Ricardo Semler, he would have spoke about this in his company Semco in Sao Paulo in Brazil. Like, he gave an example. It was a production company inside of a factory, and inside of the factory, he gave a great analogy that if we'll just use the word widgets, because people use that word all the
Yeah.
time to talk about
Mhm.
productivity. So he said if he had a team of people that worked for his organization, they might have 5 teams that worked in the factory that day. And he said, Your goal was to produce 300 widgets a day, or whatever, for the factory."
Mhm.
And he said, You and your team have complete autonomy to find out how to do that. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. You can put your heads together and decide that if coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning works best for you, well, that's fine. If you want to avoid that traffic, 6 o'clock might work for you. Maybe you want to come in at 8 or 9 or whatever. But what I want you to do is I want you to give me, and he would provide the spec of what a high
Yeah.
quality widget looked like. And I said, We have standards here. We have specs that we need to be able to attain. And we have orders that we need to be able um, to fulfill. So
Mhm.
once you can do that, you can work out how this happens. He said, but what I don't want from you is I don't want 320 widgets. I don't want 290 widgets either. I want 300 widgets. So don't give me more than I need because it's going to put an impact. It's going to impact the sales team. So they're going to have to find more sales or whatever, or we're not going to have room in the warehouse, or the supply chain is going to be impacted. But work out how to do that and do that best. And if you can do that and you complete the order to the standard that we require, well, everybody's happy with that. And really, that's what we need to be looking at into the world of work. I'll give you another
Yeah.
example. There's a really interesting, because we think that most of the time this can only work sort of in production, but there's a really interesting guy called Frank Massenhove um, who took over the Belgian Ministry of Social Security. And the Belgian Ministry of Social Security, just like Social Security in any country, is pretty
Yeah.
much the Alcatraz of departments for the civil service. Nobody wants to work for the social welfare departments because they know that there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of conflicts and there's a lot of difficulty sometimes in working for some of these departments. So he took in 2002, he took over that department. And I think he wasn't fully honest with the interviewers of what he was going to do. He pretty much said he was going to follow the same line of leading as his predecessors had done, but he wasn't going to do that. When he got there, he realized that the people who work for me, who were a lot younger than him, didn't want to be didn't want to be led in this authoritarian way and told what to do. So we
Mhm.
decided to free that up, to give people autonomy to be able to decide. First of all, this is 2002, 2003, to
Mhm.
decide where they wanted to work, how they wanted to work. And he really put it back to the whole idea that really what I want is results. I don't want you just clocking in for the sake of clocking in, doing the hours and sitting there mindlessly. So if you can provide me with the results that we've agreed upon, that's perfect. You can design your workspace in whatever way you want.
Mhm.
There will be a certain amount of funding for you to design it and be able to paint it and color it or whatever it might be. And then from that, when he first started within the in the Belgian Department of Social Protection, 18% of the civil service across Belgium only wanted to work there, which is a really small number. You know, by the time he was in full swing inside of that organization, 93% of employees across Belgium wanted to work
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
Yep, simply because, and not only did that happen, but productivity rose 18% in the first 3 years and then 10% every year then after that, which is quite incredible when you think about it. From a department where we think nothing can change and it will always be the same, to thinking differently about how we can work. And that's almost like going back to Ricardo's idea. Let's burn everything we ever thought about how management and leadership should be before, and let's move to something quite different. That's how we can have the 4-day working week. And all of the talent are going to look at organizations who can provide that, and they're going to go, I want to work there.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's going to be an offer and demand
Yeah.
situation. Like the more provide that these great working environments, more people are going to want to get there. So everyone else is going to hopefully want to need to catch up in order to retain their
Mm.
talents.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, if AI goes the way it's supposed to go as well, there will be there's a worry that there's going to be mass unemployment in many different sectors.
Mhm.
And there might be a need for a 4-day working week because there mightn't be 5 days work for many people. So that
Yeah.
might be a forced experience that we need to have a
Oh.
look at.
So like a COVID catalyst, like
COVID,
COVID was a
yes,
catalyst for
yes,
then AI might be a catalyst for another
mhm,
big change.
yes.
So how do you think that might look like then? Like what's your thoughts about AI and how it's gonna maybe push and how?
Oh, well, the truth is I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the truth is the next 18 months might tell us a lot.
Yeah.
And I probably haven't looked as deep inside of industries to find out who has been impacted from it.
Yeah.
I say anybody who is narrating audiobooks at this moment in time
Yeah.
must feel very nervous about what's going
Yeah.
to happen. Yes,
Yeah.
I've only been looking at articles
Yeah.
based on the idea that in Spotify there are
Mhm.
a lot of bands that are completely AI generated, getting lots
What?
of millions of yeah plays. And it would be in Spotify's interest
Yeah.
because they don't have to pay an artist for any of those plays. So can
Mm.
you see what's beginning to happen to as well? I think Ellie Norwood, was it Ellie Norwood was the first AI actress who was invented there a couple of months ago.
Oh, I don't know.
Um,
I don't know that one.
yeah,
No.
she looks completely
Yeah.
real, and you would not
Yeah.
know that she's not an actress.
Yeah.
So, like, there's industries that are being impacted are probably only at the early stages of being impacted. So, if it's acting and it's audiobooks and it's the music, which are the creative industries,
Mhm.
which are the ones that, of all of the industries,
I know.
we value the fact that
Yeah.
creatives are out there. Are we always aspired to be at one stage? We would have all wanted to be in a band or become an actor or actress, and
Mm.
yet these are suddenly being sort of yeah, upended. So if that industry's been upended, um, there's
Yeah.
probably many more, whether it's customer facing, not customer facing, but certainly call centers might
Yeah.
become a completely automated experience. So anybody who works in call centers might no longer be doing that in 2 to 5 years, or even quicker, depending on how rapid the changes are. So yeah,
Yeah, how ironic that, that creativity, the creative um, industry, because that's sometimes something that we thrive to, that we feel maybe we're stuck in jobs that are not perceived as creative. And that's what we aspire is like, to get into this other realm. And that suddenly, like, that's the realm that's going to be taken over by AI. I'm like,
it's
no.
gonna, yeah, it's like the tech bros are out there conspiring to take away our creative jobs so that
Yeah.
we just end up being these sort of faceless humans that sit in cubicles all the day doing a job
Yeah.
that we don't really value or enjoy. Yeah,
Yeah, but I thought, yeah, I thought it was going to be the opposite. I thought in an ideal world, I want like the mundane and boring admin stuff to be gone, so that we are free to focus on like human creativity and so yeah, that's a new world to reinvent, I guess. Like how, um,
well, it
yeah,
feels completely dystopian in the fact that if you go
yeah,
back, and I might have mentioned this before, John Maynard Keynes
yeah,
would have talked about the 15-hour work week back in the 1930s when he had seen into a world where we would have needed to work less and less because we just come out of the industrial revolution and
mm,
automation was happening in
mm,
factory floors, or not to the same extent as it is now back in the 1930s, but he could see the difference in how we could mass produce lots of products we could, and less need for humans to mass produce those products.
mm,
So at some stage the humans might come out of the equation in the production in factory settings, and now we could concentrate that. So if we only worked 15 hours a week, then we had the rest of the week to concentrate on the creative stuff like, writing
yeah,
poetry, making music, taking part in drama lessons, or, using creative, you know, um, hobbies and that kind of stuff as a positive impact on our well-being in life. And the idea was that we would always have that, or we could
mhm,
integrate jobs that sort of fitted better in with life because we could have, more creatives working at, helping the just the world to feel different or feel better. But
yeah.
it seems to have gone the opposite way as well. So now even the creative jobs that we aspire to seem to be a target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then if for argument's sake, let's say we end up again with more time on our hands, and spiritually speaking, then what can gather our humanness in a different way? AI contributing to all of this spiral that a lot
Mm.
of us are into with like all of social media and like how the world is very digital now. There is an argument to be made for people might get sick with digitally generated input and push us more towards, okay, enough. So now we need more of the real human connection and maybe bring us back to a little bit more organic and natural way of communicating and making sure that okay, now we are in person and we're engaged in person and in community and maybe in nature, so that maybe that could also be a catalyst for bringing us back a little bit more towards our humanness and yeah, true connection. Because I can't imagine that listening to yeah digitally generated music, and at some stage yeah you're gonna want to be like maybe back in around the fire camp with the friends on the guitar, that sort of way. And I because actually I know that's something that's important to you as well, right? The connection to
Mm,
yeah, being grounded, presence, nature. Like I remember you talking about your experience with the Camino
mhm.
last time. So I don't know, what do you think about that? Could it be a catalyst for us getting back a little bit more, ironically, to nature, or at
Well,
least more community, real communities, ironically?
Well, we'll always come back to that because that's an
Yeah.
innate human need. It is to be around other human beings. That
Hmm.
tribal element, that feeling of a sense of belonging that we get from the tribe of 12 or 14 people that we would have lived with before, or
Yeah.
even just a little bit more. And we need to feel that innate sort of psychological feeling that, I'm safe with these people because that's
Yeah.
what we've always looked for, and I have a future with these people. It's safe
Mm.
to grow, and that's really important to us. And one of the things that we probably would have recognized during COVID that we missed a lot was the experience that we get from oxytocin by being around other human beings. And that's the trust hormone that we get from just even being in a room of other human beings. And without consciously knowing why we feel better because there's this sort of release of this sort of trust hormone, this hug hormone, this love hormone. It's been called a number of things that we experience. And that's why I always love delivering workshops in person to people, and the people always prefer being in
Yeah.
person at workshops because we as humans love that connection. That's why festivals and concerts and gatherings are always, um, things that will not fade away. There will never be a stage where we'll just be on a screen looking at the world. We'll want to be out there involved in the world. What I'm saying is, when it comes to AI, well, and I don't have the answers to this, but if there is a sort of a mass loss of jobs and there's a gap to be filled,
Yeah.
and there may be a gap that need to be filled. First of all, we need to fill a financial gap. And I'm sure the people that own the organizations, Jeff Bezos knows that if everybody suddenly has no job, nobody can buy Amazon products anymore. And if nobody can buy Amazon products anymore, Jeff Bezos doesn't have the finances that he's experiencing at this moment. It's only with people's financial clout that they can buy his products. So they and many of his peers would recognize that if everybody has no access to finances because their jobs are gone, well, then everything falls apart. That there is
Hmm.
no market. We cannot pay for things, and then it just becomes chaos. So they recognize, and I probably am, they recognize, and they're quite aware of this, I think, that there is a need to fill that with something else. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of universal basic income, which
Okay.
is, as there's been a number of pilots. There's a really good one being done in Kenya at this moment in time, which is
Hmm.
a 12-year
Yeah.
one, but there's been ones done in Canada, they've done them in Germany, they've done them in the Netherlands, they've done them in Finland, they've done them in Iceland. So the idea is that there's enough wealth in the world. It just means the
Hmm.
wealth is distributed in the wrong spheres. Like, I was only thinking about this morning. Like if I'd won €1 million tomorrow, I'd go like,
Yeah.
my God, my life has changed, transformed forever. But there are people who have got 1,000 million euros, which is just
Yeah.
1 billion, but they have multiples of that 1,000 million euros, and they still feel that they need more. So
Hmm.
there's a distribute, and they'll never get to spend all of that. You know, so the idea is that if we can find a way to be able to redistribute
Hmm.
some of that wealth so that everybody feels a more comfortable experience of their life. So if somebody had said everybody without conditionality is going to get paid, say, I'll just use a figure of €1,000 a month for the rest of their
Yeah.
life. So that money gets deposited into your account and it allows you to be able to take care of the basics, a roof over your head,
Hmm.
food on the table, electricity, and all those other things. And if you want to top up on that, what we will do is then you will find a source of income that will allow you to be able to pay for other things like luxuries, whether it's holidays and cars and other
Get you.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but everybody has that safety net. And I've had some good conversations with some people who live in the Scandic Nordic countries who
Hmm.
talk about this as well. And why these people that live there top the happiness index when it comes to the World
Hmm.
Happiness Report every year is because they have safety nets built into society where if they do lose their job, there is a safety net from the government to be able to pay, in many of those countries, up to 90% of your wages or whatever, for a
Hmm.
period of time before you find work again. There's sort of safety nets to allow you to educate yourself as well, because Denmark education is free to go to university and you get a payment then to be able to pay for your lodgings and all the other things that you might need. And those safety nets are needed in life because we can talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the idea of that we cannot experience greater happiness or self-actualization if we're worried about food on the table and a roof over our head. And we've got to be careful that we don't end up in this possible dystopian if everybody loses lots of employment or well, what people are feeling it right now because the cost of living is so difficult for a lot of people. Even some of those who are working are really struggling with, this simple things. And it feels like everybody's on edge all the time, and that doesn't help anybody. So UBI would be a nice way for
Yeah.
people to get that €1,000 a month. I'm just using that figure, and to be able to say to the job that they go to,
Yeah.
the job is crappy and the boss treats them poorly and the conditions are really bad, that they can say, I don't need to accept this, so I'm not going to work here anymore.
Mhm.
And then all standards begin to raise then with inside organizations because they realize that people will leave because they have options to leave. They don't need to work for your organization anymore and they can take time out or they can re-educate themselves in university with their €1,000 a month if they can possibly do that, or they can make different decisions. So, yeah, and what I love about UBI is that people always talk about the idea that if you give people free money, what will they do with it? Well,
Yeah.
people have the concept that they'll spend it on things that they shouldn't spend it on, whether it's alcohol and drugs and
Mhm.
tobacco and things like that. And every study that's ever been done has discovered that people don't do that. They become entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
They have that idea that's been in their head for years, and they've never known a way to be able to put it together. And now they can put it together and they can decide to do that. Or they can decide to leave the crappy jobs and they can decide to work in companies that are making life better or are doing good for the world. And I think that's what we all need to think about. What's our
It's funny
organization
how,
doing?
yeah,
We do
it's
better.
funny how we always assume that the worst about human behavior,
Hmm.
like even in all these companies who have broken these rules, originally there is always like, oh, but like if if people don't clock in and out anymore, it's gonna be chaos, or people are gonna cheat, or no, and it's always the opposite. Or if we don't if people are going to start working from home, they're going to be working less and being lazy, and everything shows it's always the opposite. So
Hmm.
it's interesting how we tend to assume that the more freedom we get, the worse behaved we will be, and it's not. It's just, even like from a spiritual perspective, it's like like how come we are not trusting this human nature to expand and grow and look for more and better, um, and I guess it's probably a bit, you touched on it earlier, like how our brain is wired for
Hmm.
safety, survival, and then how we get easily into, like, as soon as we are stressed, then we see everything under this very narrow lens.
Yeah, so when we see
Yeah.
things in a narrow lens, our blood vessels in our brain constricts and all the energy
Yeah.
goes to our amygdala, and the amygdala is looking at fight or flight. And when that happens, then the rest of our brain, which might be looking at other executive functions like, whether it's creativity or looking at the world rationally or logically, that all goes out the window. So no, we're no longer thinking logically or rationally about why something just
Yeah.
happened, and now we're constricted to thinking of it in a stressed way. And that's exactly what we don't want to happen. But yeah,
Yeah.
that seems to be
Mm.
happening in a lot of spaces. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the last 2.5 years since we talked, like, and the work that you do, because you help organization to
Hmm.
take those steps. Like, has the nature of your work changed in any way? Like,
Hmm.
is there anything new, or like what's been happening, or what have you noticed?
Yeah, what I've been doing quite a bit of actually lately, specifically within the education sector within
Yeah.
Ireland, but it works with any sector it is. I've
Yeah.
been working with school principals and school management teams, and yeah, lots of different organizations within that sector. Uh, it's a program called Wake Up to Well-Being, Human Not
Yeah.
Superhero, where I get people to look at themselves as a human,
Yeah.
and come back to really what causes us to um, or what allows us to be able to live what we call a life well lived.
Yeah.
What is it? What does it mean to live a life well lived? Um, and yeah, it's just been this lovely experience. It's like because everybody knows, like what well-being looks like. Everybody knows that, and I do
Mhm.
lots of these things myself, whether it's exercise, eat well, try to sleep well, um, good habits around breathing and stuff like that. And just there's things that we all do, but everybody knows that. So for me to turn up to say to somebody, you should be doing more of this or more of that, everybody knows what we need to be doing more of. So I help to create a space where we become more introspective about what it means for us to live a life well lived. And one of the things we all pursue is a happier existence or a happy experience of life. And the truth is, to experience more of that happier existence of life, one of the best ways to be able to achieve that is to actually eradicate the things that are making you feel worse, the things that are making you unhappy. So if we could actually write a list of the things that cause you unhappiness, and they're probably quite straightforward things that we could all recognize. Even anyone today listening to this podcast could actually write a list. Like I could give you a list of spending too much time for me on social media certainly makes me unhappy because there's lots
Mhm.
of factors that fill into that. First of all, after 45 minutes of looking at Instagram, you go, I could have done something else in that 45 minutes or longer. I
Yeah.
got a dopamine drop at the start that made me felt nice when I opened up the app, but it's gone now, and now I feel depleted. That kind of way.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
you might feel unhappiness from the fact that uh, you're not getting the right amount of sleep, or unhappiness because you're not getting enough time to spend with people that me personally, I love being around people. So if I can find ways to spend more time around people, it doesn't have to be all the time because I do like my own company. But like if
Mhm.
I'm not getting that fix from being around other humans, that can cause me to feel different. Yeah, and so there's lots of different things that feed into, or the 24-hour news cycle is a prime example of stuff that makes us feel unhappy because we can easily watch the news, see how the world is going, 24 hours a day, minute by minute, because it's in our pocket, it's everywhere. We would have needed to be very organized years ago to actually have followed the news cycle, either read a newspaper or watch a television. But now it's different, so it's with us everywhere, and that's making us feel worse. So how are the ways I can eliminate or I can sort of decrease the amount of time that these impactors are in my life? And really, when I take these out of my experience, I just feel better. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for anybody, just write a big list of all the things that make you feel unhappy and find ways to be able to decrease the amount of time they're in your life, and you will see a difference.
I love that. What it reminds me of is, the idea because sometimes, like trying to find what makes you happy, sometimes it's easier to know what you want. I know for
Hmm.
some people, that to know what you don't want. So sometimes, like, this idea that we need to find what makes us happier, like our purpose or something, can even in a weird way be a little bit kind of like some pressure. But what you say reminds me of this metaphor of, I think is it the sculpture from the sculpture David or Michelangelo? I can't remember. This idea that, and I can't remember which sculpture, but it's a real quotation that, was this magnificent piece. And when the sculptor was asked how he did it, he said he didn't actually like create it from the stone. He actually removed what
Oh,
was
there you go.
not,
Yes,
like
yes.
so in a way, like, what you describe is a little bit like that. It's
Hmm.
just, you don't need to know what's gonna bring you this fulfillment. What if you just remove what doesn't serve you or what makes you unhappy and see what happens at the end of that?
I think it's a simpler life also feeds
Mhm.
into that, isn't it? And getting joy from very, very simple
Mhm.
things, because we could be the richest person in the whole world and still feel completely unhappy about, innocuous things that wouldn't
Yeah.
bother other people, but we get impacted by traffic or having to wait in a queue. And I'm a multi-billionaire and I shouldn't be queuing for anything. Do you know?
Yeah.
So all of these different types of things can impact absolutely anybody. But if we change our perceptions about how we feel or see with the world around us, that also is a huge impactor on our happiness.
Yeah.
Like, like I'm talking here with you on an autumn day, and if you're pining for, a 25-degree summer's day in autumn, it's not going to happen, and it's never going to happen in autumn, or if it does, it'll be very rare. And
Mhm.
if it does arrive, well, that'll be an unexpected arrival, and that'll cause me to feel extremely happy. But I know the likelihood is that it's not going to happen. So I'm better off embracing the fact that it's autumn and the light is changing and the colors on the trees are this beautiful brown and golden, and yeah, and just embrace
Yeah.
the fact that we have seasons when so many countries don't have seasons like we do. And yeah, I think when we fight against life, it's almost like when we struggle against the life that's around us, we feel worse than the people who accept the life where it is. I always quote the people from Iceland. Like nobody has seems to this day, at any of my workshops I've asked, has anybody ever met anybody from Iceland who has moved down the street from them? And no one has, because no one leaves Iceland.
Mm,
But then you wonder, why would you live on Iceland? Because Iceland is a rocky volcanic outcrop in the North Atlantic. It's cold, it's dark, and it's unforgiving because you cannot grow fruit and vegetables and all the other things that we enjoy quite readily here. And yet nobody wants to leave because they love it because their perception of where they live is exactly what I explained about, autumn, they just
mhm.
go, it is what it is, and let's make a way to live a life
Yeah.
in this environment. And yeah, I admire them for that. Yeah. They've got more, apparently up in Iceland, I think they got more choirs per capita than any other country in
Oh,
the world. They read
that's
more books than any other capita.
yeah.
And they're very musical human beings as well. So they embrace where they live. They just look for the things that can give them joy in the darkness or the, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. 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 Very, yeah. Spiritual principles, just being present
yeah,
and just,
that's it.
yeah, it's all about our perceptions, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Everything is about your perceptions.
Mm.
And listen, people could look out the window today and be completely upset about the fact that it's an autumn day and the sun isn't in the sky. Or people could be looking at it and going, there's something beautiful about how nature doesn't ask, but just does. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
perceptions.
Yeah. Yeah, and right now I'm a little bit biased because I'm in Portugal and it is actually 25 degrees in, in autumn.
Oh, I'm not jealous at
But
all.
yeah, I know. Well, I know it's not the same in Dublin, but yeah. Um, and so the work that you're doing with the principles about, like what's, a life well
Well lived.
lived,
Yeah.
so you're working with them so
Hmm.
that what's the ripple effect? So like they're changing the same way that you would be working with leaders in a company and then it ripples out to the employees and now it ripples out into the students in the school
Yeah.
yeah. And so
So
how
I
does it work then?
So I've done a number of actually, I've worked with a number of principal groups across the
Yeah.
country, and then they've asked me to come and work with their teams in the schools,
Uh-huh.
where I've actually come to their schools and spoke to the teachers about how we could,
Yeah.
all the stuff that I shared with them, I'm sharing with the teachers too. But really, what I'm wanting, or I want people to recognize is there's enough organizations that do lip service to things like well-being, where
Yeah.
there's probably a national well-being day. There is at some stage, or a national well-being week, where it's a box ticking exercise. Some organizations where they'll do yoga classes on a Wednesday for that week and free
Mhm.
fruit and stuff like that, and talk about a couple of different things. But it has to be a complete yearly thing. It used to be it has to be something where you're experiencing every day. And and the one thing I recognize that with leaders in organizations is that leaders are really poor at being able to demonstrate, an honesty in saying that if I really care about well-being, I have to look after my own well-being too as well. So I can't just be putting in long hours, and I can't be throwing out emails on a Wednesday night, or sending out phone calls on a Saturday afternoon, and expect and have written over the reception area or on the website of my organization that we value well-being and we value our employees, and we're aiming to create a workspace where people feel good about themselves, if the exact opposite is happening in the practices. So we need to come back to that, to realize, specifically when we're leaders, people look up to us. So people will follow what you do, not what you say. And you can say all the things that you want to say that sound good, but in practice, if your organization is not doing that, and there are many organizations that are ticking boxes, but not really acting out what
Mhm.
they're saying at all. Yeah.
So the idea is like from the principle that they're going to change the culture in their school from this
Yeah,
understanding.
or
Yeah.
even no, or even change the thinking of the way that they look at culture with inside of their school,
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. And do you also give like advice or like on how how that applies to the students, etc., like all that way down, or you're working specifically just with the principal?
Well, if you make an impact on that, actually, last year I worked
Yeah.
with one of the universities in the UK, Solihull University, and I
Mhm.
spent a year and a half working with the senior leadership team and all of the faculty heads and all the department heads right across the university, because the university had a goal to be able to change the experience for everybody within inside of the university, students as well as the lecturers and all of the team members. And I thought that was a really noble cause that was, and they put a lot of time and effort into that. I spent a lot of time working with them on these tools to be able to help them to do that. And I think more organizations need to be able to recognize that people value that when they feel valued. And I gave them the tools to be able to provide their employees and their team members with that recognition and their voice. And that's really important that everybody has a voice to be able to share about what they need regarding supports. Um, and yeah, I think more organizations need to start focusing on this. You know, it's so easy to get lost in the weeds, just turning up for work each day and just so
Mhm.
get mired in firefighting or trying to, fix problems that we don't really get a chance to be able to work on the stuff that really matters. And that's about, building a culture within the organization that really sort of champions people, because people need to have the chance to be able to do good work and then just go home because you've got a life, and that should be a bigger life outside of that workplace. And you've got a family, you've got your own hobbies, your interests. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of personal life and hobbies and interests, I think before to ease towards the end of our conversation, how has it been for you personally since we last talked, and your life and even spiritually, what
Well, there's a number of
what's the
things that
evolution?
I do in outside of the work that really sort of I don't know, oxygenates me
Mhm.
in life. As you know, I was involved in I've always really been interested in walking. The Camino, I've done a couple of times across Spain, 800 kilometers at a time. And now I actually, the first year I did that, I met an Italian 5 days into that walk, and I spent the rest of the walk with him. And his name is Carlo, and he's based in Bologna. And actually, funny enough, he runs a school just outside of Bologna City. And I've gone down to the school, and I've done workshops for his staff and students down there. And I'm due to go back again this year to deliver it. But myself and Carlo and a few others now go walking mainly in Italy. We do, and we found that Italy has got huge numbers of trails and mountains and spaces to walk. And I visited really remote parts of Italy and had the most wonderful experience. We're only back this year. Because it was so hot this year, we were supposed to go somewhere else into the center of Italy, but the heat wave arrived. So we ended up going up to the Dolomites, which was the very north of
Oh,
Spain,
yeah.
but these mass mountains, which were just phenomenal. We were 2,500 meters up climbing. And those moments are complete moments of connection and disconnection. So connection with self, connection with the experience of me just taking the next step, the environment around me, like I was just completely enveloped in how big the cliffs were and how big the mountain peaks were, and my breath and everything else that I wasn't thinking about, like the work that I had to do or the deadlines I might have had inside of my head. And I think we all need to have these complete disengagement breaks, and we need more of them than we think we need. So yeah, I've been good at that. So and one of the things that we do is I'm a big fan of frisbee, throwing frisbees.
Oh, wow.
So I always
Okay.
bring my frisbee
Mhm.
with me. And last year we actually got to frisbee up on the top of a mountain on the top of a hill in an old Roman ruins we did down in Abruzzo, which is fantastic. So this is
Yeah.
an old Roman um, um, amphitheater, which was a couple of
Yeah.
thousand years old. So we got to play frisbee there, and then this year we frisbeed on at a lake up at 2,300 meters up this year. So we got to do that this year. So there's always a bit of frisbee throwing into our lives, and yeah, they're very summer-based activities. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So the connection to nature again.
always.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
listen, it's always when you feel best. And actually, funny enough, I met a group of 20 Irish girls on top of the
Mhm.
mountain I was walking across on my
What?
final day. We did, yeah, 22K across the
Yeah.
mountains on our final day. And I heard these voices and I said, wow, they sound familiar. And it was these 20 Irish girls who were all
Yeah.
trekking together. So I had a
Yeah.
conversation with them. And they're a group of girls, wonderful girls who go, they said they spend most of their time trekking in Ireland, you know. And I said, that's one of the things I don't really do. And they said, why? I said, well, I just love being in warm weather in a t-shirt and a
Mm.
pair of shorts.
Yeah.
I'm in my element then when the sun is shining and I'm somewhere
Yeah.
warm and different and the food
Yeah.
is different. And I rarely do it in Ireland. So maybe I need to revisit more of that sort of climbing here in Ireland rather than having to wait to go to Italy. But the lure of the warm weather and the, I suppose, the wine and the cheese and the bread and all the other good stuff that you sort of get when you get abroad is yeah, is a real treat for myself. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe in a, generally maybe AI is gonna help us, to free ourselves a little bit that extra, maybe give a push for universal income so we can, yeah, get creative and have more frisbee time in the warm weather, something like that,
yeah,
in
and
an
follow
ideal world.
pursuits.
Yeah,
Yeah, and follow pursuits that give us more purpose in
yeah.
life because there's enough people turning up to work today that feel their
Mhm.
job shouldn't exist. If you're talking about Ireland here, the state of the global workplace report came out from Gallup, do this every
Mhm.
couple of years, and it came out in May. 9% of the Irish workforce are actively engaged at work, which means 91%.
9%.
That's it. So
Yeah,
91% of workers who turned up to work today would rather be anywhere else but here.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a damning indictment of the workplace where we feel we're not connected to the goals of the organization
Mhm.
and, you know, motivated to follow what they do. And yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But despite those numbers, you're positive that we are still we're still going the right direction, right?
Common sense has to
Yeah.
prevail in all of
Yeah.
this. Yeah, let's get
Okay.
rid of all the jobs that don't seem to give us any sort of purpose or meaning or whatever. Maybe people are going to turn to jobs that have a real sort of value that are making life better for others in their contribution and in their contribution to community and society. Yeah, the world in
Yeah.
general. Yeah, we should have more of that. That's what we should be thinking. Every company should be thinking about this at meetings, that they should have some sort of a mantra about what are we doing to make life better? What's our North Star?
Mm.
What's the reason why we exist? What's the why in what we do? And let's course correct if we feel it's not helping the
Yeah.
world or whatever, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So, is there anything else that that's on your heart, something I haven't asked that you want to leave us with?
No, no. I think what we've done is, yeah, what we've done is we have had a wonderful conversation about the
Mhm.
way I and you see the world or whatever, or what we feel or what we experience. We need more of these conversations about like what we could possibly do to reshape the way we all feel and see the world. Like if we go back
Yeah.
to our, and I talked about sort of getting rid of the past, but if we do go back to the tribal versions of ourselves where we sat around in villages, there was a place for everybody in society back then. Like the elders had wisdom, but the young people had the energy to do the hunting and to build the buildings. And we need to find a way to be able to, you know, build society with greater sense of purpose at all stages in our life. And why
Mhm.
I say that is as I get older and everybody else begins to get older, I feel we failed a lot of old people in this country in the fact that they feel that they don't really know why they exist and they're infirm and in ill health. And like I've seen examples of places like Denmark and other countries where they've created these wonderful communities, mixed communities, where they have old people and young people. They all live together. They all dine together. They all sort of use the strengths of everybody because people who are in their elder years might be quite happy to look after children while the parents are away working or whatever, you know, during the day. So these communities that everybody lives communally, I think is a way forward. We lived communally before forever,
Yeah.
but now we need to move away from this isolated. We're all living in an apartment or a box and not getting to connect with anybody else because it's not helping for all those people who sit in bedrooms just connected to the internet, looking out at the world from a screen, but never experiencing the world in reality. Yeah, let's come
Yeah.
back to that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a good a good word for, the conclusion for this conversation. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephen. I'll make sure to reference our first interview together because it was very rich with books that are super inspiring, and yes, and so waiting for our next one. I wish you the best with Italy and your work with school principals. In a way, it seems to me that you're going even one step further, that you use. I remember last time was saying that, okay, we can tick boxes with well-being days and stuff like that,
Mm,
but at the end, but the problem is like the root cause is still that the workplace is
yes.
screwed. So like you've worked on that, but now you're going one step further because if you want things to change, you need to impact the next generation as well. And so like you're going into the schools and now impacting one step beyond. So making sure like you're making your way all the through the whole chain. So yeah, fair play to you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Julie. Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. So I'll see you soon. And in the meantime, everyone, have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you next month for another career and spirituality conversation. Bye, everybody. Take
Take
care.
care, guys.